It starts with a question most adults never realize they learn to ask. Not, what do I want? But, what does everyone else need from me? Children aren't born asking that. They learn it, long before they understand why. Imagine a child walking through the front door after school. Their backpack is still on. Their shoes aren't even off yet. Before they say hello, they study the room. Not consciously. Automatically. Who's in a good mood? Who's exhausted? Is today a day to be loud or invisible? Most people would call this maturity, but maturity isn't the right word. Because mature children usually become mature adults. Children who grow up too fast become something stranger. They become experts at surviving emotional environments that no longer exist. And decades later, their nervous system is still solving problems that disappeared years ago. The strange part is that almost nobody notices. Not even them. Because when something begins early enough, it stops feeling like adaptation. It starts feeling like personality. When people hear the phrase growing up too fast, they usually imagine obvious tragedy. Abuse, neglect, violence. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes nothing dramatic happened. There were birthdays, school photos, family dinners, vacations, laughter. If someone looked through the family album, they probably wouldn't find the moment childhood ended. Because it rarely ends in a single moment. It removes one ordinary decision at a time. A child almost asks for help, then notices their parent looks overwhelmed, so they don't. They almost complain about school, then remember money is tight, so they stay quiet. They almost ask for comfort, then decide, maybe later. Children don't think in psychological theories. They think in patterns. If asking creates tension, they ask less. If staying quiet keeps the house peaceful, they become quiet. If being useful earns warmth, they become useful. Eventually, they stop choosing those behaviors. Those behaviors start choosing them. Here's what makes childhood psychologically different from adulthood. Adults are expected to manage themselves. Children aren't. A healthy childhood teaches something incredibly simple. When life feels overwhelming, someone bigger can help carry it. That lesson becomes the blueprint for every future relationship. But some children learn the opposite lesson. When life becomes overwhelming, don't add to it. Carry your own weight. Maybe carry everyone else's too. From the outside, that looks responsible. But inside the brain, something much more important has changed. Responsibility is no longer a behavior. It becomes a condition for belonging. Not, people love me, but people can relax because of me. That sounds similar. But it isn't. One allows you to exist. The other requires you to earn your place. This is why many people who grew up too fast become remarkably good at reading other people. Not because they're naturally empathetic. Because prediction once felt safer than surprise. Imagine living in a place where storms arrive without warning. Eventually, you stop looking at the flowers. You keep watching the sky. Not because you enjoy weather. Because predicting weather feels safer than being surprised by it. Emotional unpredictability teaches the same habit. You notice tiny shifts in voices, small changes in facial expressions, the silence after an argument, the tension before someone speaks. People later admire your emotional intelligence. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes what they're seeing isn't emotional intelligence. It's emotional surveillance. There's an important difference. One helps you connect. The other helps you survive. Adults often reward this adaptation. You're so easy to raise. You're so independent. You're so mature. Notice something strange about those compliments. None of them describe how the child feels. They describe how the child affects everyone else. Easy, helpful, responsible, convenient. Imagine hearing versions of those compliments for years. Without realizing it, your brain begins solving a dangerous equation. If people appreciate me most when I need the least, perhaps needing less is who I should become. No one has to say it out loud. Children are remarkably efficient at finishing sentences adults never intended to start. Years later, this equation keeps running. A friend asks for a favor. You say yes before you've even checked your own schedule. Not because you're generous, because the decision happened before your awareness caught up. Someone apologizes for asking too much. You immediately tell them they're not a burden. But when you need something, the sentence feels impossible to say. Isn't that strange? You believe everyone deserves care, except yourself. Most people call this low self-esteem. That isn't quite accurate. It's often something much older. Your brain learned that your own needs to belong at the back of the line. After enough years, the line becomes invisible. Here's where many people misunderstand themselves. They think they're perfectionists, or overachievers, or chronic people pleasers. Those aren't explanations. They're outcomes. Imagine seeing smoke pouring from a building. You wouldn't study the smoke. You'd ask where the fire started. Psychology works the same way. The interesting question isn't, why do I always help? It's, when did helping become safer than needing? That's a completely different question, and it often leads somewhere unexpected. There's another consequence people rarely talk about. Children who grow up too fast don't only lose parts of childhood. They lose opportunities to discover themselves. Think about how children normally figure out who they are. They play. They make terrible drawings. Invent ridiculous games. Become fascinated with dinosaurs 1 month. Space the next. Magic after that. None of it has a purpose. That's exactly why it matters. Play is how children experiment with identity. It's how they discover, maybe I'm like this. But when a child becomes preoccupied with keeping life stable, experimentation quietly disappears. Curiosity is replaced with usefulness. Expression is replaced with responsibility. The tragedy isn't simply that they grew up early. It's that they had fewer chances to discover who they might have become. This creates one of adulthood's strangest experiences. Ask someone like this, what do you actually want? The question sounds simple. The answer often isn't. Not because they have no desires, because they've spent years treating everyone else's preferences like important information, and their own like background noise. Imagine spending 20 years carrying everyone else's compass. Eventually, you forget you ever had one. Perhaps that's why rest feels so uncomfortable. Most people assume rest feels difficult because they're ambitious. But ambition isn't always the reason. Ask yourself this. If your value has always come from solving, fixing, anticipating, helping, who are you on the days nobody needs anything? For many people, that silence feels strangely uncomfortable. Not because peace is frightening, because peace removes the role they've been performing for so long. Without problems, there's no script. Without a script, they're left with a question they've avoided for years. Who am I when I'm not useful? That question has nothing to do with productivity. It has everything to do with identity. Maybe that's the deepest consequence of growing up too fast. It doesn't simply change your childhood. It quietly edits the story you tell yourself about why you exist. Not, I'm here to experience life, but I'm here to make life easier for everyone else. Once that belief settles in, something remarkable happens. People begin calling your survival strategy your personality. Reliable, strong, independent, selfless. Those words may all be true, but they don't explain how you became that person. And explanation matters, because personality usually expands your world. Survival narrows it. One is built from curiosity. The other is built from necessity. The difficult question isn't whether you were the responsible child. Many people were. The difficult question is whether responsibility became so familiar that you never noticed everything it quietly replaced. Because perhaps growing up too fast isn't really about losing childhood. Perhaps it's about never getting enough time to discover the version of yourself that existed before usefulness became your identity. And if that's true, then one question remains. When you strip away every role you've spent a lifetime performing, what's left? Most people spend years trying to answer that question. Very few ever think to ask why they lost it in the first place. If this helped you understand something about yourself,
subscribe.
Every week, we explore the psychology behind the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors most people never question.